I love making my image just a little bit more dreamy, a little bit softer, a little bit more hazy. It's one of the latest plugins from the team responsible for some of my favorite all-time plugins. We have Filmconvert, Cinematch, Halation, and now Hazy. The plugin has all the same features and usabilities of their other software, but with an entire new purpose: to emulate and maybe even replace actual real-world softness and diffusion filters. And you can tell because all the presets in Hazy have names that correlate to their real-world counterparts. But does Hazy really come close to the real deal? And are they even trying to? Well, don't worry, I actually have a plan to test all of that out. And even just casually using the software, the images all look amazing. I think at least a light touch of this is probably going to be getting applied to basically every video I work on. But back to the filter styles, just how accurate are they? Well, while they are sponsoring this video, Filmconvert and Hazy and all those guys are probably some of the chillest collaborators ever. They don't ask to see a script, hear concepts, or any approvals, so I basically get to do whatever I want. So with that out of the way, I've essentially got 3 goals, and this video is split into those 3 parts if you want to skip around. First, I'm going to do a general overview of the software and just how I've been using it to get you guys caught up. Second, I'm heading to 1104, my favorite rental house in Chicago, and I'm going there to compare Hazy filters to their real-world counterparts that they're based on in a controlled environment. And last, I want to go over some pros and cons of the software, some of my overall thoughts on how it all works. So let's get to the overview. So essentially, Hazy works like any other plugin for your dedicated software. Once installed in your NLE, Adobe, Final Cut, DaVinci, you should have easy access. I typically am going to be applying Hazy either directly to video clips or as an overall effect to an adjustment layer above all of my clips. But for me, this is usually one of the first things applied before something like a Rec. 709 conversion line. So if you just have normal footage, this will work right away. But if you shoot in log, you will want to change your camera, make, and model to get the best results. So for me, that's Panasonic V-Log. But if you have used their other stuff, this should all look pretty familiar, and they got bunches of cameras in there. And if you'd rather just add this as an overall last effect in the chain, just leave this in the standard gamma profile, and it's going to work pretty well for most standard, Rec. 709 type of camera profiles. After that, you probably have the most important choice of this software, which is the filter style. These all are communicating to me that these presets are trying to emulate the effect of real-world filters, even down to the strengths of them being measured in like 1/8, quarter, half, etc., instead of being like a sliding bar like other plugins. I think this kind of connection to a real life thing is one of the coolest parts about all the software they do, and it all has a really natural, realistic feedback and response. If you can't quite dial in the intensity with the filter strength we talked about, there is actually an intensity slider below that if you're gonna really dial it in, and a spread control, which just how much that effect is spreading from the highlights to the dark parts. And honestly, that is basically all I've needed personally. There's tons of tools below that to monitor and dial in your look. And don't be shy to click on that little help question mark at the top to get some more info on those. But I'd tell you more, but I just really haven't needed any of those things, which is, I think, one of the things that they do so well is Filmconvert, Hazy, anything, it's really easy to just click on and it looks good right away. You can dial it in really quickly with some really broad controls, but if you dig deep, there is a ton of really technical stuff in these plugins. And before testing out the real filters, I just want to say really quickly, guys, if Hazy or anything from the Filmconvert people are interesting to you, I've got my own 10% discount code, which also gets me a bit of commission. So remember to use RTFilm code at checkout, or check my links down in the description and all that stuff. Anyway, I drove down to 1104, and again, if you're a filmmaker in Chicago, this is my favorite place for sure. If you're a student or even just a low-budget filmmaker, they are really gonna hook you up. They are super great people, super knowledgeable, and will absolutely go above and beyond for anybody working with them. Anyway, I looked online and I identified 3 filters in their inventory that lined up with the filters in Hazy: Soft, Glimmerglass, and the famous Black Pro Mist filter. I know there is dozens of factors for this type of filter: aperture, focal length, even sensor size, but I still think this is going to be valuable. So I used my S5 II and my 28-105 from Sigma, which is a really clean combo that's going to be a neutral starting place for Hazy. So let's start with Glimmerglass. The Glimmerglass is kind of just supposed to help the highlight roll off and soften that line of the contrast while keeping the sharpness pretty good. The filter itself is very glittery and glimmery, so it lives up to the name. Anyway, here is our Glimmerglass filter. I used quarter strength to keep it more subtle, but be sure to leave it in the comments if you think I should have used a half or one stop or something. And here is Hazy with the same emulated filtration. Looking at them side by side, I would say the effect it's going for is remarkably close right away, but the Glimmerglass effect inside of Hazy in this situation is a little strong compared to the real thing. Drop down that intensity and spread a little bit, and I think honestly, this would be hard for a lot of people to tell. I wish I had like a big following base so I could see if people could tell the difference, but whatever. Next, I wanted to test the soft filter. 1104 gave me a good description. It's kind of like a Hollywood close-up effect, you know, that soft focus kind of vibe. But at quarter strength, it should be pretty subtle. So again, here's the real filter. And now Hazy. Again, the general effect for me is really good, but I had to adjust the intensity and spread just a bit. And after the adjustment, it looks really close. Although, keep an eye on the flashlight part of these tests because even the lighter strength filters like quarter strength always seem to bloom out more in real life than in the plugin. And just for funsies, let's try the soft 1 filter. With the same adjustments in Hazy, I would say the effect is really good and does give that soft close-up Hollywood sort of vibe. So, and of course you can crank it up way more if you want to. The only real differences are that, of course, you can see the bokeh and the filter has the texture of those little orbs or whatever they are in there. And again, the flare from the flashlight is a little bit inconsistent. Oh, here we go. YouTube's favorite filter, the Black Pro Mist, a legendary filter. I think it works best because it does a little bit of everything. It takes the edge off the resolutions just a little bit, blooms the highlights just a little bit, and reduces the contrast, but not too much. Great overall filter. I actually tested a lot of strengths of the Black Pro Mist, so let's get into it. Started again at quarter strength, we get the same results I've been getting before. Again, I had to turn the intensity down a bit, but overall looks really good.
And as good as this looks overall, and as close as it's getting, that flashlight thing is starting to bug me a little bit. It doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look 100% accurate. So we're definitely gonna have to dive in some of the deeper menus in a minute. So stay posted for that.
Black Pro Mist 1 though was shockingly close right away. I actually left the intensity alone, adjusted the spread a little bit up actually, and it looks incredibly close. Again, besides that little pocket light, when pointed right at the lens with the real filter, the bloom effect is really strong. I don't know if you prefer one or the other. I actually think Hazy looks a little bit better and a little less distracting, but to each their own.
And just so you guys know, it is possible to kind of get these to match a little bit better. So if you ever did have a situation where one camera had a Black Pro Mist and one didn't, maybe you're trying to facilitate some kind of visual effects shot or something later on, you can go in and adjust the intensity and the saturation and the exposure and some stuff like that and get it pretty close.
And one more time, shout out to 1104. They didn't even really require me to shout them out or say anything specifically about them, but man, they are good. They're super pro. All their lights and glass, they're so constantly updating everything, so knowledgeable, just fun to talk to. So stop by, whether you're getting an entire camera package or just a haze machine for a music video, no matter what level of production you're involved with in the Chicagoland area, you absolutely need to keep them in mind. So overall, I was really impressed with Hazy and how it stacked up to the real world filters. When it came to the overall vibe the filters were going for, whether it was diffusion, lowering contrast, or sharpness, smoothing the skin, or a combination of all this, it did really do a great job to take a lot of the edge away in a way that I thought was pretty spot on. Of course, it isn't going to add any additional flare elements or quirks or aberrations other than resolution and diffusion, that sort of thing. No, none of that bokeh disruption like we saw with the soft filter or other unintended side effects of these filters. And I think that could be a pro and a con. So in fact, let's get into the benefits and the things to keep in mind when choosing between Hazy and these actual filters, and then go into some of my final thoughts. So yeah, the first pro and con is exactly what I just said. The flares, reflections, extreme lack of contrast when really strong lights hit those filters, and other aberrations that could be the bane of some people's existence, or a fun quirk you might really love. Most filters control really well for this nowadays, especially the new ones, but you can't ever fully eliminate that possibility. Hazy, for better or for worse, doesn't have any of those issues except for, well, the ones you intend. Although I know there's going to be people out there who just will never kind of accept that there's something that can compare to the real thing. And again, I'm not even sure if they're really trying to compare with real filters at a certain level, but it is a nice alternative. Next is going to be just the price. Well, a single black Pro Mist filter is going to be somewhere between like 200 and 500 bucks for one. Hazy is coming in at just under $100, which is a crazy good deal, and it could be 90 bucks if you use code RTFilm at checkout. But I wink. Anyway, while I think that price is really solid, you could probably find some cheap or free versions out there that are, but I also know there are others that are hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And I think the things Hazy offers, the quality of the results, the control you get, whether it's on that surface level of just the main quick options or the deep menu things, it's all just really cool. And I think it ends up being a cut above more simple and more complicated solutions. Another thing I was thinking while testing the filters at 1104 was just, man, it's kind of nice because you don't have to baby Hazy like a real filter. You can't scratch or scuff or get your fingerprints on a plugin. So there's that. But hey, on the flip side, especially if you have huge files or a really old computer, a real filter won't really add any render time, obviously. But honestly, even on my old Intel MacBook, and yes, I know I need to upgrade, the render times were surprisingly great and never added noticeable time onto my renders. And I think just like I talked about with halation in a past video and Filmconvert as well to some degree, there's an extra utility here past just, emulating a filter on footage you capture with a high-end camera. You can use it to soften the digital edge of a poor dynamic range of an action camera. You can really make cheaper or smaller cameras look a lot better, or even throw it over stuff like animation or adding it as a final layer to visual effects to blend the effect all together in a way that would be really hard to do manually, at least for a guy like me. And while it's not easy to carry a black Pro Mist around for your Meta Ray-Bans or your iPhone, you definitely can't add a black Pro Mist to motion graphics or an animation. So that versatility is another just a little bonus that I've found really helpful. And while it isn't a big deal, the last kind of thing to keep in mind is that to get the most out of this software, you do kind of have to have a baseline knowledge of the real life counterparts of these filters. Sure, you can kind of trial and error it, and it's not a big deal to scroll through some and just see how they look. But, I've really found myself just using the filters I personally used in real life and could understand their effects intuitively. But if you have spent any amount of time on set, you'll know that the time switching in and out real filters, especially with multiple lenses and cameras, can take a lot of time, and depending on how often that's happening, that could be enough reason to leave the filters at home by itself, especially because a lot of people switch out the strength of filter based on your shot size or your focal length, which sounds like a lot of work to me. I never did that. So yeah, Hazy, just like everything else these guys do, it's pretty great. It's the perfect combination for me of starting with a real world equivalent and translating that into a plugin. Whether it's realistic grain and color and softness from Filmconvert, or scientifically matching all sorts of cameras from different manufacturers, or now Hazy, that grounded realism, and then taking that ability to intuitively or manually tweak and adjust and dial in every possible setting. Like I've talked about before, it's just such a great balance. And I think personally, they have once again totally knocked it out of the park. And I cannot recommend Hazy enough if this is an effect and a vibe that you use often or are interested in. It just gives you so much control about how your image is going to end up. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Thanks to the folks at Filmconvert 1104 and everybody watching. And if you are watching this video, you know what to do. Do the thing, like, comment, and that's right, subscribe. And if you did subscribe, I'll see you when I see you.